Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel. So a lot of doctors, especially from the UK, move across the world to Australia and New Zealand to work, and I moved myself back in October 2024 and I've thoroughly enjoyed my time here. So in this video I will like to talk about the three main ways to go about finding a doctor's job here in New Zealand or also in Australia. I applied for jobs both in Australia and New Zealand and got jobs both in Australia and New Zealand through all three of these ways that I'll be discussing. So I would say there is a vast opportunity available in the jobs as a doctor working here in New Zealand and also in Australia. There's some really great rewards both from experience, financial and just general travel and cultural. But there is also a need to be efficient with the application process, which is what I'll kind of talk about in this video and also future videos. So hopefully some of it can be helpful. So like I said earlier, there are three main ways to finding a job as a doctor here in New Zealand or Australia, and I'll cover those in this video. I would sort of put as a disclaimer that the type of job and the sort of area and position in a country will affect which type of application process and which of these methods that you use or approach you use to finding a job is best suited. What do I mean by that? Well, essentially, if you're looking for a busier city life in one of the largest cities, central, then usually the best way of applying is the last two. Whereas if you're looking for a job either in a rural, remote area, not really too bothered exactly where you are, or maybe even in a city but on the outskirts, then the first option or the first approach to finding a job is probably the best suited for you. So without further ado, the first sort of way or method or approach of finding a doctor's job here in New Zealand or Australia is through an agency. So the job that I currently have was arranged through an agency, and to be honest, it was a very streamlined and a very efficient process. They do a lot of the paperwork, they do a lot of the admin, and they find your job quite quickly. So how does applying for a job through an agency in New Zealand and Australia work? Well, first of all, you've got to choose which agencies to go for. I would usually choose and stick with one, but there's no harm in sort of signing up to two or three, just to increase and broaden your opportunities. I think it's important to bear in mind that a lot of the agencies will contact the same hospital. So if you sign up to two or three agencies, the hospital may end up getting your CV from different agencies, and there can be a bit of cross-agency conflict, so to speak. So yeah, I would say probably safe to do one, but maybe two or three is okay. And essentially you put in your details, you put in your CV. Usually that's a mandatory element of signing up for an agency, is to put your CV. And then what they'll do is they'll arrange a call with you quite soon after that you've filled in the sort of application page on their website, and they will discuss exactly what you're looking for, what areas of the country, whether you're applying for New Zealand or Australia, what type of role, sort of surgery, medicine, what position, just to get all those sort of key criteria of what you're looking for. And then they may even say, look, I have good connections with Wellington Hospital or a hospital in this city, and would you be interested? I can probably contact them quite easily. And then you may be like, yeah, sure, but I'm also interested in X, Y, and Z. And they'll be like, okay, yeah, I'll contact them and reach out. And so after about 30 minutes to an hour call, then they'll go away, they'll contact the hospitals, particularly the ones that they have good connections to, and they'll contact you back, usually quite quickly, saying this hospital has positions available or is interested in interviewing you. And they will do all the background work, they'll arrange an interview, and they'll say, are you free on this date to have an interview? So in my experience going through an agency, I got an interview maybe within 2 weeks or 1 week of signing up to an agency. So it's very quick, which is great. And then of course you have your interview, and if you get an offer, then that's great. And then after that, the agency will support you in terms of sort of the relocation process, which, to be fair, if you're doing it by yourself, can be very daunting. There's a lot to process, a lot to think about, but agencies have the experience, I guess, of supporting individuals, other doctors, sort of moving to Australia and New Zealand. So that's the agency way. That's way or approach number one, which I said is, as I said before earlier in the video, if you're looking for a more remote hospital, you're not too bothered where you're going, or you're happy to be sort of less central in a main city, then typically agencies are great because they're the hospitals that the agencies usually work with the most. That's not to say that they won't work with central ones like Wellington, for example, which is the capital city of New Zealand, which they do. But typically, if you go on their recruitment pages, most of the jobs are in hospitals, are in smaller regional cities or on the outskirts of larger cities. So that's approach number one. Approach number two is applying to hospitals directly. Now this is a great method and I got a lot of positive response, but what is important to bear in mind is the fact that it requires you to do a lot of legwork to get the contact information. So a lot of these hospitals don't readily provide their contact emails or addresses for their recruitment departments online. So you have to do a lot of digging to try and find either PDFs of what people have created before who've gone through this process with emails from different hospitals that they've had luck with, or if you go through the hospital's individual website, often it's very convoluted and it's not clear exactly where it is, but you can sometimes find a contact email. Send an email across, and if you're sending it to the wrong person, usually they're quite helpful and they'll redirect it to the recruitment service. Now this method's great because you are picking the hospitals that you are applying for. So I guess when you're applying to an agency, you're giving them your CV, they're sending it to loads of different hospitals, and it's kind of like a lucky dip in a sense. You get, oh yeah, this hospital has a vacancy, would you be interested? And you're like, oh yeah, okay, or maybe not. Whereas if you're emailing the hospital, you've done your research, you've looked at the city, and you've been like, right, I am interested in working in this part of the city, or I'd be happy to work in this part of the city. So I'll apply for this hospital. So you know where you're applying, you know what you're applying for. That being said, as with all processes where you're emailing people, the sort of response rate is not always that high. So often the emails you find online are old, not updated ones, so they don't really go to anyone at all. Or if they do, then usually their inboxes are quite inundated and they may not reply, or they may not reply for a long time. You'll get an email back when you already have a job and you're about to fly over to do that job. You're like, oh, would you like to have an interview? Which I did have an experience of. So yeah, you'll probably need to send quite a few emails, either to the same hospital if you very persistently want to get that hospital, or to a range of hospitals just to increase your chances of sort of getting a response. But after that, it's usually quite a swift process. Once you're liaising with the hospital recruitment agency, as long as they're recruiting, then they'll want to interview you soon. So again, usually sort of 1 or 2 weeks. And then they're in my experience, they're very supportive as well, kind of like with the agency in getting your application process moving forward, getting your visa done, getting sort of a registration with the medical council done too. The one that I had got quite far with, they had sent lots of correspondence, lots of emails, very detailed about what I needed to do, and it was just really nice, really smooth process. So I wouldn't necessarily say that going through an agency is the only way to have quite a smooth transition, because hospitals can be quite good at contacting you and telling you what you need to do. So that is the second approach, and the third approach is kind of specific to the bigger hospitals, I guess. So the more popular hospitals, so to speak, are the ones that tend to be in the bigger cities. So Auckland hospitals, I think Perth maybe, and Sydney. They usually only accept people, as far as my own experience and from hearing what other people who are working there have said, through officially advertised roles on either particular websites like Seek, which is a job seeking website, or through their own sort of job recruitment portals, which Auckland, I believe, have their own recruitment portal. So you'd have to wait for a particular time when those jobs advertisements come available, and then you apply through their system. And I guess in a way, you know exactly what you're applying for. Again, kind of like when you're applying directly to the hospitals, you're applying for a hospital in Auckland, or you're applying for a hospital in Sydney, and if there's a specific advert from a specific hospital in that city, then again, even more, you know exactly what you're applying for, which is good. I guess the disadvantage of it is you kind of have to wait for those to come available, but at the same time, you know that job is available, as opposed to just blankly applying to a hospital saying, I want to have a job here and I want to do it in surgery. Do you have a position available? Here, you know, there's a F3 or PGY3 role available in orthopedics at this hospital, and that's what you want to do, then that's great. So that's definitely a way that works for a lot of people, particularly those who want to, like I said, work in a more popular sort of city centre, which I would say is definitely a consideration, because if you're going there particularly by yourself, then you'll want a lot of social contact, and that's what you're more likely to gain from living in a large city. So they are the three main ways I would say of going about applying for a job in New Zealand and Australia, and I used all three, and I was able to get offers from all three methods. Like I said, I went through it with an agency in the end. That's not to say the agency method was the best method, and I'll definitely do another video on the pros and cons of each of the methods in the future. I'll also do a video on some of my own experience through each of those systems, and more importantly, and I guess for you, what would be quite useful is to go through the actual application process and the process after you get an offer, because that's quite a time important process. You need to be doing things quite efficiently to not delay your flight out to whichever hospital you're going for. There's a lot to do, there's a lot to think about, and I think it'll be good just to sort of lay it out and map it out. So I hope you're looking forward to that video. I hope you found this video useful. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.